don't be afraid of making mistakes, but yeah, help each other out.
So one of the things now I'm going to start teaching you with all of this is again, every touch that I make is a functional movement, meaning that when you touch someone, even if you're visualizing 5 years from now, that child, walking down a flight of steps, whatever it is, it's a functional movement. I don't just touch somebody. Everything that I do has a purpose, even if it's, again, a window of opportunity that's down the line. So when I say that, I don't touch someone expecting them to turn around and do it. But what I'm about is I've really analyzed. You've no idea. I can't do anything without sitting there and really studying my movement as well as especially the babies. And so when the baby first comes out of the vaginal canal, they aren't meant to have any kind of articulation of the skeletal system because you don't want the child to get caught. So if the arm is a whack or something like that, whenever you have a situation where the skeletal system is trying to get in the way, breached, more obvious, but it affects the delivery. So what happens is and again, I'll be touching all of these. I can't spill my brain out in 1 hour. You guys will be like, okay, I'm leaving. The absolute horizon is really your first milestone, meaning not only does the baby, quote, lie flat on the ground. If that was the case as a milestone, it's not. And there's quality to the way they lie down on the ground. Very similar to an airplane. An airplane has its absolute horizon, or what we might consider sea level, but it can go below and above sea level. So there's some babies you can put into a crib, and they're fine with it, where others, just that little bit of descent creates those startles. And that's where you'll start to see the early warning signs of cerebral palsy, or a low-tone child will just, be low-tone, where the arms fall below. But what we're doing here, again, when I talk about functional movement, and crossing midline, all kinds of things that you'll get throughout the week. Let's say if I had cerebral palsy, the biggest problem with cerebral palsy that's most obvious, shoulder is either before the elbows or behind the elbows, but they can't go in and out. Mm-hmm. So lots of times, let's say you'll see this position. Guess what? What you just did is not happening. The processes, the spine is not crossing midline. So you'll get this kind of movement, but you're certainly, see, just putting my arm out, look what happens to my spine. It crosses midline. It crosses midline. So AT&R is not about the action, but it's starting to articulate. It brings the scapula up, and it starts pulling that upper thorax. And so when you get these asymmetrical, do you see what it's doing to start articulating my spine?
For those who don't know, ATNR, asymmetric type.
Right. So the fencer pose, and again, that's in the documents that I sent you as well. But so when you're working on someone here, the tendency is to go a bit quick, but when functional movement 2, tempo-wise, is sort of look to the left and look to the right. So as my general speed is sort of around vision. So if I'm rocking someone, you know what I mean, they really, and a baby is not going to have that kind of movement and acceleration vocabulary. But if you're looking at it here, we had the hand on the chest, spine, and just my rotation here, if I were to reach up and touch that ceiling, do you see that the movement? If I was coming here, again, if I was reaching and coming back, do you see the movement? Or if I was, again, rolling and coming, like Thad was doing, and all of that. That's that movement that comes throughout the system. And so that's what I talk about when I say functional movement. But I was not doing this kind of thing. Just pushing down on the spine. Again, not a criticism. I'm just trying to show you how movement, your hands will start to have conversations within their bodies and that you're working on it. So it might just look like you're just sitting there doing nothing. But guess what? Now my vision, my ocular muscles have just totally changed by doing something like that. As well as, if I wanted to go into self-care responses, or as Stuart was saying, driving a car, putting on my seatbelt. All of these, now, these go into counter opposition, which as an adult will do. You will not see that in babies. Babies counteract, counterbalance, but they don't go into counter-opposing. If they do, that's where you're starting to see these kind of moves. And that's something, again, of a warning sign that you'll see in the movement. Because an immature system, immature meaning children in general, an immature system, but also can be a traumatized system versus a mature system. A mature system can counteroppose and come back, but an immature system will just counteract and counterbalance.
I think not just with babies, like older people as well, just turning in bed, for example.
Well, that's where, again, you have to, then they start becoming an immature system. When the rotation goes, that's where, the gait and all that starts to decrease. A more complex of that movement is, again, starting to articulate the pelvis later on. See how my upper, I have to cross midline to do something like that? And more like a corkscrew, versus, let's say, if I wasn't crossing midline, and now, again, trying to get my leg up. And that's where you'll see they start to counter-oppose, because they're looking for something, that energy has to go somewhere. And that's the difference between that and something like this.
Then they put up a handle and they pull themselves up.
Correct, because again, they're in counter-opposition mode,
Yeah.
but also I don't believe dystonia is a neurological disorder. I believe that that's more, again, gravity-based that they learn. That's why babies aren't born dystonic or with apraxia, those kind of things, ataxic. They develop those as they learn movements to do something with their system. Any questions with all of that this morning? All good, all good? Everybody was nice? Nobody bit anybody?
Maybe I am alone, but I didn't understand quite well.
Okay.
You said two different things. One is when your system is mature, you are counterbalancing.
No, when I'm a mature system, I can also counterbalance.
Can you show together?
Yeah.
Mature and mature once more.
Right.
How it's,
Well, I'm just going to say, so when I'm a mature system, not only can I weight transfer and counteract, counterbalance, but I can also counteroppose. So meaning that I can do something like this. I'm counteropposing gravity, and I can do that because I'm a mature system. But an immature system will need to have where they weight transfer and counteract, counterbalance. So it starts as early as the first day with absolute horizon. An immature system will do this. They cannot, that's what we've seen. That's counteropposing. And when a system goes into counteropposing, they're already bypassing their immature learning system. And so you'll see a baby, this is what I was talking about with Thad. If I go to here, the head was still here, right? Versus if I'm going here, that you'll start to see, again, that counterbalance, that weight transfer. So here he was starting to do this, more on the left side, but this is the move he was doing. Versus again, which will go into sitting up. Again, this is a weight versus a counter-opposing. I'm not saying a child is never going to be in this move, the static or something and something happened or sudden stimuli that they go here. But you will not see a baby. See here what I have to do to roll over? Now I have to decide, let my chest fall and my face maybe plant, which most babies don't want to do. So they'll start, and that's what he was doing. He was kicking out and bringing him back. I call it the kickstander. He's bracing himself. And that's where you're seeing the wideness in the hips start to happen. Versus here, rotation.
Yeah.
Right? And then that will start to mature where I can go up and do things. Versus, where I'm trying to do all of this around And see, now my vision is much more static as well. Does that help answer? Okay. Baby here yet?
Check.
Because we'll,
basically the spine across midline, not the spine rotation. And then you also worked on the head, remember?
I did, but it's not that I worked on the head. It was all based off of those principles. I'm working with where the body is in space. That midline crossing, also what people don't realize is that's where we start getting our power from. I'm actually pushing my spine against gravity, and I'm pushing my spine against gravity. If you see a baby react, a newborn, or you can touch here and they will push you away. You can touch them here, they will push you away. And they work on, but they're actually moving against gravity. And then we start to assume that.
No, but they said it would be 11:30.
No, I'm just judging my time, and with, if they were here early, I'd put them on the table.
So if you had a cerebral palsy child who's like 4 and never moved, you just assume they're at newborn level, and you want to start kicking in that immature responses.
In a better way, I would say about it, I'm just going back to make sure they have a solid foundation. If you have a crooked basement, you're going to have a crooked house. There's no way you can start. Yeah, and so that's where I would be after. And another thing I'll be teaching you guys here, where I'm bigger at, is not the milestones, but the transitional phases. Did they transition from an absolute horizon into sitting? What I just did, sitting up that way. Or again, what's really happening now is I get these videos like this of a baby. My child's sitting, and I'm going, okay, your child can't sit up. Yes, they can. You can see my child sitting. I want to see a video of that child going from their back to sitting. I get videos on the belly. I get videos on... Okay, I'm going to ask again. Can I have a video of the child from the back coming? Oh, they can't do that. That's what I've been trying to tell you for the past 2 minutes. So in this here, now where am I going to go? Guess what? That move you just did, I can't do. I can't, because I'm not, see again, that crossing midline. There's no way if I'm being put into sitting that I can do that. So you'll start seeing where, and they're like, oh, look, they want the toys to come to them. Well, yeah, they do, but they also are stuck. And this is not going to happen from that kind of position. Because to side sit, and that's where you see with the newborn assessment, you should be able to get that in an infant, just from day one. And you'll see when the knees do more of this, well, how's that child going to sit up if that's what the leg is doing from the day they're born? So, and we just are going in and offering this rotation. A sunflower, a flower, the sun comes up and comes down. That rotation you'll start seeing everywhere. All living organisms need rotation to oppose gravity, period, the end. So if a tree lacks rotation, it's going to die. If a rocket takes off and does not have rotation, this is where the Newton's law, same, atmospheric pressures, rocket pressure, and it'll blow up the rocket. That rocket, like a bullet, has to twist through to get through to gravity. So the earth and all of that, so each finger, each orifice of a baby, and us, for optimal living, will have rotation. And the reason I believe it's a law right now, I've presented it as a theory, but there's no rotation in outer space. So all astronauts lose all their developmental milestones immediately. They cannot stand, sit, crawl, lie down, sleep. All their milestones are gone in outer space. There's no rotational movement, and their systems fail. So this will show you too muscle-based activity. Well, astronauts have been doing it for 60 years. Their bodies are still exploding in outer space. They don't have functional movement. I get it that I can lift weights and have an increase of muscle mass. That doesn't mean I'm going to be able to feed my face. So a child with cerebral palsy is stronger than anybody out here. But just because they're strong doesn't mean that they can play a piano or whatever is the life skill that they want to achieve. Not that I want them to achieve, but what they want to achieve. Yes, it's great that we conform to society, but at the same time, we all have our own interests, even in this course, and we really need to allow those things to come out and mature in a way that can turn around and benefit so many more people.
Ask about the sort of going from immaturity to maturity. Say for someone like Daphne, chronologically, do we go with? So basically she rolls in a bit of an awkward way.
Correct.
So she'll crunch up, flop onto her side,
Right,
and then sort of jiggle herself around until she flops onto her tummy.
right.
Where do you come in at? Do you encourage her to roll inflection? Do you encourage her to roll an extension?
Oh, see, those words won't come out of my mouth.
No.
Yeah, no, because there's no such thing in my book as flexion and extension. Because again, then you're taking away the rotation and you're going to a muscle-based system. One thing you'll see, and you saw it with Dad, and we'll go back and forth, so please. So when I mentioned, when his pubic bone is up, where's his head? People think it's the head lift. Now, even I can't do this. I cannot bring my hands up with my bum up in the air. Right? So my pubic bone comes down, rotates, and when I'm in this position, guess what? I'm totally 360. Right? So now I can put my hands down if I want, but I can also, again, I'm all here. I'm totally available. I'm neutral to do these kind of things. Now I'm not saying I'm never going to use my muscles to come up. I will. But at the same time, if you watch a baby, the baby will come up like this. So an immature system to me, definition-wise, is when they can teach it. Just because a baby is, quote, walking at a year old, doesn't mean that they've mastered the skill of walking. They're going to fall down. They cannot teach it. That really doesn't start to show up to around 12 to 16 in some, and that's what's happening too with the iPads and stuff, is the maturity of the system is really getting blown out of the water and delayed. So another telltale, up until about the age of 10, you'll still see where they use their hands, whereas I can start doing this. And again, that's counter-opposing, where I bring my leg up versus here and here. And we'll be, like I said, throughout the week to be covering those kind of things. But see, in this position, again, see, I can go here, and then I'm here, I'm totally neutral. And with that rotation, whereas here, right, I have to have a much more, and see, I don't do that too well, to come around. Now, if I did Cirque du Soleil, or probably you, it would be no problem. But again, those are not skills that I'm care to master it and working on. So, but that being said, that when the transition skills are not happening properly, then that's where you're going to start seeing the discrepancies, and the system is going to stay immature longer. You know, when I grew up, kids were on their bikes down the place and all that sort of stuff. We're seeing less and less, you know, due to phones, iPads. It's like the largest generation, they just don't want to drive a car. The day I turned 17, man, it was midnight, 12:01, and I was like, let's go to the DMV. You know, whereas a lot of kids, I don't think Graham will ever drive. You know, that'll be the one milestone he'll be missing, but he just does not have the logic for it. So, baby is out.